Hello, everyone. Good afternoon, just about. It's exactly 12 midday here in the UK. So if you were in my live stream that I did overnight, my time, which is a reasonably good time for a lot of my viewers, but not for me in the UK. But anyway, I've had a sleep since then. And what I started to do was go through the 136-page document that Richard Allen's defense posted yesterday. Apparently, it has since been sealed. So fortunately, those of us who were able to grab that before it was sealed have that full document, 136 pages. So if I just go to the contents, just very quickly, what I did overnight my time, so it might be worth you going and watching that live stream. Not that I want you to leave here, like you can listen to what I'm going to say in this live stream without seeing that live. But what I did in that live was go through the introductory section. The introductory section is 28 pages, and it kind of lays out the defence's argumentation for wanting a Franks hearing. So what a Franks hearing is it's a hearing to discuss the lies and the omissions that the prosecution made, allegedly, what law enforcement made when they petitioned the judge to get a search warrant of Richard Allen's home shortly before he's arrested. So if that was thrown out, if the search warrant was deemed to be in error, then the case against Richard Allen stands on very little. And it would also bring into question the arrest affidavit, which we're going to briefly look at as well. We're going to kind of not compare necessarily what's in this document with what's in the PCA, but there are some things that I do want to go to the PCA and have a look and see what was said then by the prosecutors compared to what the defense are saying now. So so what I did is I went through that overview, the introductory portion. So if you want an overall view of what this document is saying and what on earth the defense is claiming, then that would be a good live stream to go to. Because what I'm planning to do over a few lives, I'm splitting them up, because if I read and commented on a 136-page document in one live stream, you'd be looking at like an 8, 9, 10 hour live. And I can't do that. I just can't do it. I don't have the stamina for it. I need a rest in between. And it's a lot of reading. It's a lot of reading. So I've decided to split it up into a number of lives. So in this one, in this live stream, we're going to do part 1, the crime scene. And there's some issues relating to the timeline that fit into that as well. And then later today, I'm going to come back tonight. I'm going to come back and do part 2, which is a long one. I might even not even get all the way through that one. I might do, but I'll come back tonight and do part 2. And then we've got part 3, which is only short, part 4, which is only short, and then part 5, which is the conclusion. So I can do that in another live. I'll do that tomorrow. So that's the plan. So in this live, we're going to talk about the crime scene. It's pretty graphic in places. I'm not going to read it word for word because I think there's a lot of superfluous words. It's not terribly well written, particularly this part 1. It's not particularly well written. It could have been shorter. Let's put it that way. I think they've done it in this way for a little bit of snark and a little bit of sarcasm. And I don't know whether it'll come over well, but yeah, I'm not going to read the graphic parts word for word, although I am going to read most of it. All right, so that's just a warning. And then tonight we'll go through the long one, which is all about Odinism and how that is connected to the murders. And the people that have been named by the defence, it's a very, very bold move that the defence have made. This is it's one of those career break or make moments. You can make or break your career with things like this, because this could go so very badly wrong for the defence. However, what I think overall that they're attempting to do is it's good. This is creating reasonable doubt. And because this is now part of the record of this case, they can bring all this up at trial. So it's a very, very bold move, naming other suspects. Because, of course, we all know that the defence, all they have to do is create reasonable doubt in the mind of one juror. So because this is now part of the case, this is part of the record, then the defence can call all of these people and imagine what the jury are going to make of all of this stuff. And his trial is in 3 months' time. Richard Allen's trial is 3 months away. Jury selection is due to start on January the 8th. So I can't see it happening. 3 months, given this massive bombshell, I don't know. But this is all according to the defence, and the defence are coming with receipts. They are coming with receipts, guys. So they can back up what they're saying according to them. So the state will have to respond to this, and it's forcing the state to comment on these potential new suspects. They're not new suspects. If you listen to the previous live and what I said there, these are not brand new, out of the ether suspects. These are people who were looked at early on in the case. Brad Holder, who's one of these suspects. I'm doing air quotes. I know you can't see me, but that law enforcement looked at early and apparently cleared him, is furious. He's absolutely furious that his name's come up again. So the defence are going to really have to be able to back up what they're saying. But it is a bold move. It's a bold move, and potentially it's a genius move, because it's forced the state's hand. They'll have to respond, and the chances are there is going to be a Franks hearing, and they're going to have to explain themselves. It's very bold, very bold. All right, we're nearly there now. Sorry if this is making you dizzy. All right, this is where we're going to start. So let's just say a few hellos just to give people a minute to get in here. We'll start in a couple of minutes. Yeah, absolutely. But this has created a massive amount of reasonable doubt. It's crazy. Look, at face value, it's absolutely crazy. But it has to be considered. This is now part of the case. This is now part of the case. The defence has made it so. Hello, Mason. Yeah. Yeah, it is. They want cameras in the courtroom. They're campaigning for cameras in the courtroom, because we haven't seen any of the hearings so far. We haven't seen it, because it's only very recently that Indiana has allowed cameras in the courtroom anyway. It's a recent change to Indiana law. So his defence is something else they're campaigning for. to have cameras in the courtroom. If you want an update, there's going to be a lot of surprises for you if you're not up to date on this case. It is going to be a shit show. It is. Hello, Kentucky. Owen Flo, ASMR Tingle Pink, JD, Joe Sullivan, Cat, Flicking Bollocks, Stephen, back again. Yes, we are. Shelley Roo from Oz, Marie, Momsamo, Teresa. Just listening to what you missed last night, and wow, yeah, I know. It's crazy. Absolutely crazy. Hello, Rin, CW, RZ TV, Purple AJ, Tamara, Sharon, your local grandmummy. Who else is in? Didn't he confess? Yes, he did. However, what the defense are claiming is that he's been under duress, and some of the guards that are looking after him, and I use the term looking after very loosely, they are also Odinists, part of this religious cult. So he probably does need protection, yeah. Probably does. You were married to an Odinist. Listen, if you don't know what Odinism is, it's going to be explained fully in part 2 later, but it did briefly give an overview of Odinism in the introduction. So if you were in the live stream earlier today, then you'll know what it is. But it's a modern take on the Old Norse religion. So it's the Old Norse gods, and Odin, who is the father of the gods in Norse mythology, Odin, they call him, the new Odinists, this modern kind of version, they call him the All-Father, because he's like the father of the gods. And then you've got Thor, Loki, Freya, and a bunch of other Norse gods. So they consider Odin to be kind of the All-Father. That's who they worship. And this modern version of the Old Norse mythology has come to be known as Odinism, and it's become linked with white supremacy and white nationalism. So they are claiming that Abby and Libby were murdered as part of a ritualistic sacrifice. And that's what we're going to get into right now. Why the defense believes that this is a ritualistic sacrifice to the gods. It sounds crazy. It sounds absolutely insane, but I can swear down that this is an official document. This is the actual defense bringing this forward as a with names and with receipts. So it's very, very bold, and by the end of this part you will realize just how bold it is. So let's start reading. I can still see the chat over on to my left. Just make that a little bit bigger. But human sacrifice wasn't part of the belief. No, it was very ritualistic, and it was it did involve sacrifices. Some of the old pagan religions did involve human sacrifice. They did. Now, in terms of Old Norse, they may not have been especially big on sacrifice, but certainly many of the old pagan beliefs involved human sacrifice. They absolutely did. Now, there's lots of questions as to why Abby and Libby would have been sacrificed by the Odinists. Why them? How did they get them there? There's lots of questions that I think we do need to talk about. But in this live, I'm just going to read and comment on what I'm reading. Perhaps once I've read the entire document into the record, so to speak, then I'll do a live and we can critique it. And we can say, yeah, but what about this or what about this? Is the 13th or 14th of February significant in Odinist circles? Not that I know of. But then again, I am not an expert in this. Now, the 14th of February, obviously, is Valentine's Day, but I'm not... It was significant in the old Roman calendar. I do know that. But Old Norse, I'm not aware that that's a significant date. But if you are a modern Odinist, maybe it is. I don't know. You just looked up the Norse myths and religion and they only had animal sacrifice. Yeah, maybe they did. But what I'm saying is some of the ancient pagan religions did have human sacrifice. But my question is, and will continue to be, why Abby and Libby? Why would they choose a human sacrifice of Abby and Libby? How did they get them there? How did this come? How did this play out? Now, what they've said in the introduction, and I'm sure that they're going to go into it in more detail in the in this main part that we're going to start going through, is that one of the girls' parents was involved with, I don't know whether it was an interracial relationship or something of that kind. And also, one of these suspects, Brad Holder, who is allegedly involved in this, according to the defense, had a son called Logan, who apparently was dating Abby. So there's a direct link that the defense can draw between Brad Holder, one of the guys that they're implicating, and Abby through Brad's son, who was Abby's boyfriend. So there is a link. It kind of makes sense when it's all explained, but there's still a lot of questions, a bunch of questions. That's true, Stella. The murderers need a reason to play out a fantasy. Many people use religion, cult to justify evil deeds. That's true. That's true. Okay. Heather Feather, we're going to talk about that. This is in this part. There's a witness who saw him running from the crime scene covered in blood. Is there though? We'll see. Right, let's start reading. Okay, so this is potentially graphic, very graphic in places. Not going to read it all word for word, but I am going to read most of it. The stuff that I'm going to shorten is because the grammar is so bad. And I'm sure they've done it in that way to make a point. However, it's just very time consuming to read it through. All right, so part one, the crime scene. When members of a search party found the girls in the late morning of February 14th, 2017, Abby and Libby had been missing for approximately 22 hours. The scene was ghoulish, which is it's an interesting term, ghoulish. Right, okay, so it gets bad. Libby was found at the base of a tree with 4 tree branches of varying sizes intentionally placed in a very specific and arranged pattern on her naked body. Libby was positioned flat on her back. Remember, Libby was 14. and Abby was 13. So Libby was positioned flat on her back with her left arm stretched above her head. So imagine lying on your back and stretching your left arm up, and that left arm was touching the base of the tree. So we can now see why this scene was clearly staged, and it has been said before by the prosecutors that the scene appeared to be staged. We did know that the scene was staged. Some of these details that I'm going to talk about the blood on the tree, I'm going to talk about shortly, did come out in the early days. And I remember seeing it in the early days and thinking, oh, this alleged leak. And I thought, oh, that's nonsense. That's the game of telephone. That's just what happens when something comes out and somebody magnifies it or exaggerates it. But it seems, according to the defense, that what was said in the very early days about this ritualistic aspect to the scene, it appears to be true. Absolutely, Stella. I feel absolutely gutted for the families. I hope that they had foreknowledge that the defense were going to do this. I hope the defense told them beforehand that they were going to do this. They probably didn't. The chances are they didn't, because the defense is working for Richard, not for the families. So why would the defense have any contact with the families? But it could be that the prosecutors got wind that they were going to release this. At least I hope that the families were aware of the details at the crime scene. We weren't aware of them. We've never seen the autopsy reports, but presumably the families have. So I really, really hope that they had some forewarning as to what was going to come out. I also feel bad for Richard Allen's family. I really do feel bad for his family. So anyway, so Libby was positioned flat on her back with her left arm stretched above her head, touching the base of the large tree. Libby's right hand was covered in blood and her left hand was covered in blood. Blood spots and blood drippings were seen all over Libby's body from head to toe. Libby's right arm was placed alongside of her body, so it was just her left arm that was outstretched, touching the tree. One large tree branch had been placed on her left shoulder. This branch was so long it extended over Libby's head several feet and below her legs for several feet as well. So a big tree branch, right? So this person who staged this scene has found all of these branches and laid them out very carefully. Two smaller branches formed a V where her legs joined her body, with both sides of the V extending upwards towards Libby's head. So there's two small branches put together as a V, which is significant in the symbolic aspect of Old Norse. The alphabet and the symbols are called runes. So you see in this documentation lots of talk about runes. So two branches making a V that extended up towards her head, and then one branch extending to the left of Libby's head and the other to the right of Libby's head. So like a crisscross, I guess. The last of the four branches extended across Libby's body on a line from her right shoulder to her left shoulder. So there's two that form a V, and then you've got these crisscrosses. This fourth tree branch also connected with the other three branches and was placed under both branches that form the V. So very carefully placed. So this isn't an attempt just to cover the body, like hide the body by dumping a bunch of twigs and leaves and branches on. This is very, very careful. Is there a V rune? Well, funny you might say that. Let's look at this. This is Brad Holder, I got these from his Facebook, which was public. As of last night, this was public. Brad, if you ever see this, just make your Facebook private, dude. He's also a Freemason, for anybody who's interested in the Freemasons. He's got some very interesting artwork on his Facebook. Apparently some more provocative stuff has been removed. Those are some runes. There's one. Flick past it. There. On your right-hand side, there's a bunch of these pictures, photographs on Brad Holder's Facebook. I'm not saying that he's involved. He's certainly an Odinist, but I'm not saying he's involved in Abby and Libby in their murder. That's what the defense are saying. All I did was look at his Facebook and found out that he's an Odinist and worshipping the All-Father. And there's a whole bunch. You can see I've just took some screenshots. Can you see here? This is in the woods. 2 twigs in the form of a V. I don't know what to tell you, because they're very clearly placed. That's 2 twigs. That's not just a random twig on the ground that he's took a photograph. That's 2 twigs that have been deliberately placed in the form of a V. It's an upside down V, but, you know, turn the foot around, it's a V. What it means, I don't know, because I can't read runes. But anybody who can read runes, what does that mean? So it was funny you should say, is there a V rune? Because it appears there is some, I don't know, some interest in V. Or a 7. Could be a 7. Yeah, it could be a 7. All right. Okay. Libby's sliced neck was partially covered by this 4th branch. So presumably we knew that the girls had died as a result of a edged weapon, but it does appear that they had their throat slashed, which is absolutely horrific. And there would have been a lot of blood. A lot of blood. Is this the boyfriend's dad? Yes. Yes. Brad, this dude whose Facebook's this is Abby's boyfriend's dad. It's just insane. It's crazy. Who predicted that this would come out? Who predicted? Who predicted a defense like this? Yeah, it's to get the evidence found in the search warrant thrown out, claiming the search was unconstitutional, that the prosecutors lied, that law enforcement have concealed evidence from the judge. There appeared to be no blood sprayed or dripped onto the leaves or the tree near Libby's head and sliced neck. It appeared likely that Libby had been killed at a nearby tree and then dragged to her final resting place, where she was then positioned before having the tree limbs placed on her in a very specific pattern. One question I've got is, I don't know the answer to this because the defense don't tell us, but from the investigation of the crime scene, was there a location nearby where there was a whole lot of blood? Like, how far had they been moved? And in a minute, when we talk about Abby's discovery and how she was dressed and position was very different than that of Libby. Libby was naked. Libby still had blood on her body before she had these tree limbs placed on her. But Abby would have been treated very differently. And however, she still would have lost a considerable amount of blood. So where's the blood? What happened to the blood? There must be an area very close to where they were found that was really bloody, and that surely would have been located given the amount of blood that would have been lost, even though it's in the woods. Now it's close to the river. Now I've thought, did they have their throat slashed in the river? But then I don't know. That doesn't make real sense either to me. The V rune is Kenaz, torch, controlled energy, passion, creation, and transformation. Or Kano, opening. Dear God. So these are, it's the Old Norse alphabet, but it's more like the symbols stand for things. So in a way, it's kind of a form of an alphabet, but there's lots of them, like symbols. I really believed Richard Allen was Bridge Guy. Now I'm not so sure. So did I. So did I. Now, what I did was, this is Richard Allen in his booking photo in 2022. That's the first artist depiction of Bridge Guy, July 2017. And then I put a picture of Brad in between them both. And this was how he looked in 2017. He looks very much like Richard Allen, in my opinion. But does he look like Bridge Guy? Bridge Guy, to me, didn't look like he had a beard. He could have had a small goatee because he had his head down, but it doesn't look to me like he had a full beard. And Richard Allen often doesn't have a full beard. So, and apparently, Brad has an alibi. Apparently, this is what he's saying, that he had an alibi and that he was at work. So, all right. The murderers, and it's murderers throughout, so the defense are consistently saying that this was a scene that was created and staged and the murders committed by more than one person. So this is also a defense tactic to say, well, you know, you're saying that Richard acted alone. How could he possibly have done all of this? Now, personally, I think he could have done. I think anybody who was motivated to abduct two young girls out for a walk and murder them, there was enough time that afternoon to stage that scene for anybody who was motivated to do so. So I think whoever it was could have acted alone easily, in my opinion. But I've always been very open to the possibility that there was more than one person involved. And if you remember back to October of last year, I wish I got the interview like to hand. I don't. But Doug Carter, you know, one of the officers who had been a really big part of the investigation, said that this investigation had many tentacles. He was actually saying that when Richard Allen was arrested. So although anybody who was motivated to do this could have acted alone in the amount of time that was available, because remember, there was a gun involved that could have threatened them into, you know, doing what they were told. But I'm 50-50, honestly. I can see it from both sides. Anyway, the defence are saying that there's more than one person, none of whom are Richard Allen. So the murderers treated Abby very differently. Abby was found just a few feet away from Libby. Her body was not placed parallel to Libby, but rather at an angle. So her legs were a few feet away from Libby's legs, but both of their heads were found a few feet further apart from each other. So themselves, the way that they were placed was sort of in a V, if you think about it. So their legs were closer together than their heads. Now, that could have just been a coincidence, just the way they were laid out, or the positioning of the bodies could have had some form of symbolic meaning. I don't know. However, both of their heads were further away. Okay, significant differences existed between how Libby's body was found and how Abby's body was found. Abby was not found at the base of a tree. She was fully clothed, and she was dressed in Libby's sweatshirt and jeans. So Libby was naked and still had blood on her. Abby was clean, but was dressed in Libby's clothes. No blood appeared on Abby's clothing, meaning that she was likely murdered while naked and then dressed by the murderers after she expired. Because her throat was slashed, she would have had a lot of blood loss. So her clothes, if she'd had clothes on, would have been covered in blood. So the defense is saying she must have been naked and then washed because she was clean. But Libby wasn't. Libby had blood spots all over her body, so she hadn't been washed. She had blood on her hands. So she was likely murdered while naked and then dressed by the murderers after she expired and after the blood had stopped spilling from her neck. But where was where was Abby's clothes? Now, I do know some clothes were found in the river, but I don't know whether Abby's clothes were found or whether Abby had clothes on and then Libby's clothes were put over the top. It's not clear. Not really clear at all. But she was clean. Abby's hands were clean, no blood. Abby's feet were clean, no blood. Other than blood found around Abby's neck, where the murderers had inflicted the fatal wound, very little, if any, blood was found anywhere else on Abby's body or clothing. So they washed her. She was cleansed, potentially. Now, remember, the river's close by, so she could have been carried to the river and washed in the river. That's why it occurred to me that maybe they were killed in the river. But I don't know. It would have been incredibly difficult to control two people in the river. One person, anyway. For one person to kill two people in the river. But if there was more than one person, is there some form of symbolic ritual where you slash somebody's throat in water as part of the ritual? I don't know. I'm speculating. Whose blood was on Libby? Was it hers or Abby's? We're going to get to in a second. The blood on the tree was Libby's. Now, I don't know about the blood on her body. I'm assuming it was Libby's, but I don't know for sure. Okay. It's crazy, this. It's such a bold move. I mean, who's going to believe it? Who's really believing it? I mean, it's intriguing and you've got to give it serious consideration. You've got to, because this is now part of the case. All right, guys, they've read this into the record. This is part of the case. We can't get away from it. We have to address it. But I couldn't believe it when I started reading this document, when I got it kind of yesterday evening. The juxtaposition of the spots and streaks of blood found all over Libby's body, with the lack of blood on Abby's body and undergarments and overgarments, is stark. The murderers appeared to have gone to great lengths to keep Abby's body and clothing clean from blood. I don't know whether they went to great lengths to keep her body clean from blood. I don't think they could have done. I think they washed her. Or, as I said, she was killed in the water. Abby was found on her back like Libby. However, Abby's elbows were bent, with her right and left arms both placed on her chest. Abby's left hand and arm near the left side of her face, and her right arm near the right side of her face. So kind of bent upwards. Strange position. Also, Abby's left leg was straight while her right leg was bent at the knee. The murderers also placed a bent right knee under her left leg. Just let me draw your attention to this picture. One leg under the other leg. Draining blood. Is that symbolic of draining blood? Apparently it's a tarot card. This. But I don't know. And like I said earlier, apparently there were some very provocative pictures on his Facebook that he appears to have drawn himself. This is what's being alleged. I'm not saying this is true. This is just what's being alleged. That on Brad Holder's Facebook, there used to be pictures of females, young women or girls lying under a tree appearing to be dead. So, yeah, you can understand why, given all of this, that the defense are using it. Because it absolutely creates reasonable doubt. That's the position of the hanged man. Yes, I was told that in the night. I don't know anything about tarot cards, so I'll just refer you to anybody who knows about tarot cards. It is horrific, Isabel. Why put that on your FB? I know. I know. Exactly. And why have your FB public? I was able to just go through his Facebook, go all the way back to like 2015 and screenshot anything that I wanted to. It was all public. Maybe he's changed it now. Okay. Like Libby, those involved in the murder had placed tree branches in a very specific pattern on top of Abby. The pattern looked very similar to an asterisk, consisting of 3 tree branches all joined in the middle. I can't quite visualize this one. At least one of the tree branches appears to have been cleanly cut by some instrument like an electric saw, rather than split or broken by hand, indicating that this was a preconceived plan. Look, it could have been a branch that was out there that had been cut by tree trimmers or something in the past and had just been dropped. I don't think that's necessarily indicative that they brought the branches with them. Why would you go to the woods and then bring branches with you? Or are they saying that they brought a saw with them as well? I don't see that. I don't see them start sawing ends off branches. And why would you just do that to one? I think, and this is just my opinion, I think that branch was like that because I can go into my woods, right? And every so often the local authority comes along and cuts some branches off that are, dangerous or whatever, or chops a tree up that's rotting or whatever. And you find branches on the ground that have got straight edges. right? So if somebody committed a bizarre murder in the woods that I go to and laid out branches on top of the body in some kind of runic pattern, they could possibly choose a branch that had a straight end because it had been cut in the past and just been left there by tree trimmers. So I'm not reading anything into that, honestly, personally, but that's just me. Above Abby's head were smaller sticks that had been placed over her hair, crudely mimicking horns or antlers. Now, we do know that the old pagan religions, presumably including Norse, because there was lots of pagan variations, Old Norse is just one. The Anglo-Saxons had a very similar mythical structure of the gods to that of Norse. In the Germanic religion, the old Germanic religion, Odin was called Woden. That's where we get Wednesday from. Our names of the days of the week come from Old Norse and Old Germanic. Did you know that? Did you know that? So Monday's Moon's Day, Sunday's Sun's Day, Saturday, I can't remember them all now, but I do know Wednesday is Woden's Day, which is Odin. Just a different name for the same god. Like the ancient Greeks and the ancient Romans had the same gods, they just call them something different. Thursday, thank you, Twisted. Thursday's Thursday, yeah. Friday is Frigg's Day. That's one of the goddesses. Tuesday is... I can't remember the name of the god, but it sounds very much like choose something. Saturday, I can't remember Saturday. Somebody go and look it up. Freya, yeah, Freya's Day, Frigg's Day. The hangman is represented by the Hebrew letter M, one of the three mother letters. Mem corresponds to water and Neptune. Saturn. So Saturday is Saturn's Day. Yeah, but Saturn was a Roman god. Was Brad Mason ever questioned by Ellie? Do you mean Brad Holder? Pancake Day. Mem is the 13th letter. So is it significant that they were murdered on the 13th of the month? Or is it all just a coincidence? The French use planets. Yeah, Freya was badass, yeah. Yeah, the Norse gods, yeah. Wendy, the Norse gods. But the old Germanic had the same mythical structure of the gods, but they just called them something slightly different. So Odin was Old Norse and Woden was Old Germanic. But anyway, okay. The amount of blood that would have been perhaps expected at the crime scene based upon the location of the injuries of both girls was not visible in the crime scene photos. So the crime scene photos that the defense would have got access to would have been taken in 2017. So what I want to know is the photos of the place where the girls were murdered. Where was all the blood? Where was it? There would have been pools of it. Now, obviously, it would have soaked in because it was 22 hours before they were found. Well, 22 hours from when they were dropped off. So when they were last seen to when they were found. 22 hours. Now, obviously, they may have been murdered 2-3 hours after they were dropped off. We don't know exactly. Maybe an hour. So a maximum of 22 hours. So yes, of course, this is in the woods. The blood would have soaked in, but still there would have been evidence. But if it was in the river, this is why I'm thinking the river's involved. The river's involved in that it was used as a cleanser. Maybe cleanser's too ritualistic a name, maybe cleaned. But why wasn't Libby cleaned? Why did Libby still have blood on her while Abby didn't? Did the killers run out of time? Is it just a case that they ran out of time or what? Okay. So the amount of blood that would have been lost wasn't in the crime scene photos. So how well was that crime scene looked for? Or was that crime scene genuinely in the river and therefore it was washed away? We may never know. We may never know. The defence have provided the court with 12 crime scene and autopsy photos marked as exhibits 5 to 16 as confidential. So thank the Lord, whichever God, well, thank Odin if you want, that they are preserving these girls' dignity by not putting the autopsy photos into the public domain so that somebody some point in the future could do a freedom of information request and get the autopsy photos. So they've been marked as confidential this early on. So hopefully it remains that way because nobody needs to see these autopsy photos. However, what I would be interested in seeing is the crime scene photos if there is two scenes. So the scene where the girls were found and the scene where they were murdered. I want to know how far apart they were, basically. Like, why did they choose that place to lay the bodies out? What's significant about that place? The photos support the descriptions provided in the previous paragraphs. In addition to the unusual way the girls were posed, including the stick formation placed on their bodies, another unusual marking was found on a nearby tree. The symbol that looks similar to a letter F appeared approximately 4 feet above the base of the tree. Now, remember, Libby's left hand is touching the tree. It's like stretched above her head, touching the tree. The F was red in colour, and later DNA testing showed that the F had been painted on the tree using Libby's blood. Do I think there's any chance that this was a snuff film? Anything's possible. Anything's possible. Anything. Additional blood spatter was found at the base of the same tree. All the blood at the base of the tree appears to have been Libby's blood as well. So I think we could probably assume that the blood on Libby's body was also Libby's blood. I think we can assume that. The defence had also provided the court with Exhibit 17 DNA documentation supporting the fact that Libby's blood was the source of the F painted on the tree. So we've got some information here in the footnotes. People don't read the footnotes. You should always read the footnotes. The footnotes are always informative. Always read footnotes. So this stick configuration is a spot-on resemblance of the rune called Hegel. The rune is used to depict the word hail. Therefore, the combination of the Hegel rune found on Abby and the Anzor rune found on the tree, when combined, proclaim Hail Odin. This sentiment, Hail Odin, was one of the many caster eggs Brad Holder left behind on his Facebook page on multiple posts. Do you want to see my receipts for this? Do you want to see this? Let me find it. Oh, you can't see, I'm in the way. Hold on, let me just take that away. Can you see at the bottom there? He's set out some runes on the left-hand picture. He's set out some runes that he's made himself from deer antlers. And it says, Hail Odin. And there's loads of them. Loads of them. I just screenshot one. So it's true. That's what he's got on his Facebook. Doesn't mean to say that he was the murderer, but it certainly means he needs a very careful looking at. Okay, so the rune Hegel, I'm going to look that up. Hegel rune. Okay, Hegel. That's Hegel. The Hegel rune. So it's like a crisscross. So the body would be the straight up and down. And then you've got the twigs that crisscross above. And then you've got Libby with that V shape also on her with the two smaller twigs. A lot of people make their own runes. And I'm not saying anything against it. I'm not. I'm just saying it's very interesting. So that's Hegel. So it's the letter H. But each of these symbols like has a symbolic meaning. It's not just a H. All right, what's the other one? Anzus. Anzus. Oh. Okay, so that looks like an F because there's another rune that looks like an F, but the two like sticks that point outwards point upwards. Odin. Anzus. The rune of the divine. Because there's another rune that I thought it was that looks like an F, but the two point upwards. And that means prosperity and wealth. But it makes more sense for it to be this one. Huh. This, okay. The defense team speculate. So it's their speculation. Yeah, that's right, Clumsy. Two runes that resemble Fs, one facing up while the other more down, yeah. Are we certain that the blood is a rune and not simply spray? I wouldn't imagine that spray would create like a straight line and then two other straight lines. I'm not sure that. I mean, it would be one mighty coincidence if it did. Given the other things that are at the scene. Wasn't the sacrifice done by hanging? No, not always, no. No. Some of the old pagan religions, the ceremonies were conducted in water. That's why you get these bog bodies that have been found in multitudes of places that have been so well preserved. There's one in a museum in London. I went to see him, and he's like so well preserved. He's a bit skinny, but they're so well preserved. Like, they're not skeletonized at all. Like, they maintain some skin and some tissue, and it seems to be that a lot of them show signs of being sacrificed in some way. The Tolland man, is it? Probably got a picture of him. Hold on. Would I have it on this computer, though, is the question. Probably not. Just let me have a quick look. It's one of the times I went to London. It's not something I do very often, but I went to see this. Don't think I've got it on this computer. Which then begs the question, where would it be? Oh, no way, he's here. He's here, he's here, he's here. He's here. All right, I've got him. I've got him. Right, I'm going to have to just unshare this for a second to be able to share my entire screen. To do it this way. All right, check this guy out. Him. He's been on some radical weight loss. So he was found with pots around him. Can I make this big? There we go. So legs, arms, and he's like crouching. There's his head. Look at that for preservation. So it's like a fetal position. Kind of. But how well preserved. Like, you've still got the skin on, maybe even some tissue under the... Yeah, the peat bogmen. But this was found like this, in this like hole. I don't remember his entire story, but yeah. So that's just an interesting aside. Hold on, let me get back to where we were now. All right. It's the tannins in the bog. It is, yeah. Tollerman, you studied him. Cool. Cool. Cool, cool, cool. There was a woman found on the Moors Peak district. A guy confessed to killing his wife, but this lady was 2,000 years old. Oh, my word. Okay. No, I don't know whether I agree with this. I don't know whether this isn't just a step too far. However, the defence team speculates that because of the lack of blood visible in the crime scene photos, especially concerning Abby, that the murderers may have saved the blood to be used in future rituals. This is merely a theory, admittedly, not supported by any facts currently in possession of the defence, but a theory that would certainly explain the lack of expected blood at the crime scene. The F resembles a rune called Anzus, which stands for Odin. Again, when paired with the Hegel rune found on Abby, the combination will proclaim Hail Odin. This F symbol is the same F symbol found in many of Prad holders' Facebook pages, which will be attached, including holders' creepy self-drawn illustrations in which a red F rune was found at the base of a tree where a man appeared to be sacrificed on a tree. Is that it? I can't zoom in. Maybe it's... wish I could move that thing away. Could I do it like that? That you can't see it even. Is there an F on there? Or is it one of the ones that he removed? Maybe. I don't know. But this defence team, they're really gunning for this Brad guy. Really gunning for him. They really have it in for him. All right. Okay, so said exhibit marks as confidential. The defence has provided 2 photos of this F found on the nearby tree, hereinafter called the F tree. Exhibits 18 and 19 marked as confidential. Defence is also providing a photo of the F tree from a wider angle for the court to have a perspective as to where the F tree is located relative to the bodies. Confidential photo, Exhibit 20. Under Abby's left lower back was a shoe. This shoe is believed to be Libby's shoe. Under the shoe, there was a cell phone, which is Libby's phone. So this is the phone that she took the photo, what was it, 43 seconds or so, little video of Bridge Guy. I didn't see an F either, Boo, but maybe it's not that picture, because there were some that he's deleted from his Facebook. Okay, this information was confirmed by the recent deposition testimony of Liggett, Leesenby, and Holman, according to recent depositions taken of Sheriff Liggett. So, for those who weren't in the live earlier, Liggett is the sheriff of Carroll County. The famous video of the person that many people call Bridge Guy was found on this phone. Additionally, allegedly found between the 2 girls, buried under the leaves and dirt, was a single bullet. So it's this single bullet, which is an unspent round. So it's not been fired, but it's been in the gun and it's been ejected from the gun without being fired. And therefore, it would have the striations that were individual to that gun, allegedly. That's the thing that links Richard Allen to that crime scene. However, the defence has got problems with this single bullet. They've got problems with it. The defence has 2 photos of the shoe and cell phone found under Abby's legs and marked them as Exhibits 21 and 22. They've been filed confidentially. They've also got 3 photos of a bullet found in the ground between Abby and Libby, marked as Exhibits 23, 24 and 25. Now, this is the problem with this bullet from the defence's standpoint. So there's 3 photos that the defense have been provided with that show the bullet in the ground. So remember what they do when they get to a crime scene and they find something significant. They take a photograph in situ, so where it is, and then they're meant to photograph it against like a measure to show its size. And then at all stages of how that piece of evidence is moved, it has to go through an adequate chain of custody. So when it's bagged, it has to be labelled, and then every time it moves between one person and another, or one lab and another, it has to be signed in and signed out. There has to be a chain of custody throughout to prove that that piece of evidence is still the same piece of evidence as it was when it was found in situ. So there's an issue here from the defence's point of view, and they do have a very good point. So they say, it should be noted that as of the date of this memo, the defense has no photographs of the bullet allegedly found between the girls after it was removed from the ground. So none of it being pulled out of the ground. Now, they wouldn't necessarily take a photo of it actually being pulled out. I guess they may do, but there's none of that. None of it immediately after it was pulled from the ground. Now, you would expect to see that. No video or photo of all sides of the bullet immediately after it was pulled out from the ground. And this is the one that gets me. None of it next to a measuring device to show its length. None of it none of what it looked like after it had been pulled out from the ground, because you'd expect to see it being cleaned. So once it was cleaned up, you'd expect to see a kind of a in situ photo, and then a photo next to a measuring device. You've probably all seen them in crime scene photos. They have like these little kind of stick things that are measuring devices. And you'd also expect to see that bullet cleaned up. Where's those photos? How do we know that the bullet they are saying is from Richard Allen's gun? How do we know that that's the same bullet that was in the ground between Libby and Abby? How do we know that that's the same bullet? I'll wait. How do we know it's the same bullet? I can see their point here. I really can. There's no proof that it's the same bullet based on what the defense has at the moment. Why would there be DNA on a bullet? There's no DNA. There's no DNA linking Richard Allen with that scene. Allegedly, that we know of at this current time. Shockingly, in this deposition, Sheriff Leggett admitted that he had also not seen any photographs of the bullet taken once the bullet was pulled from the ground. In other words, the only photos that the defense has found in the discovery are of the bullet still buried in the ground, and that could have come from any gun. Or the bullet was placed. How do we know? How do we know? At this time, the defense has no idea if photos of the bullet after it was removed from the ground even exist. So were they even taken at all? Or the photos exist, but the state has not yet turned these important photographs over to the defense, which would be a big problem. or the defence has missed these photos in the voluminous discovery, which is possible. Either way, the defence has asked the prosecutor to please locate these photographs. Had the gun been fired? No, the bullet had not come from a fired weapon. It was a casing. It had been cycled through the gun, but not fired. So it had been ejected, but not because it had been fired. So it was not a spent round. It was an unspent round. It's not a spent bullet, no. And it allegedly matches Richard Allen's gun. But how do we know that that bullet has not been swapped, or it's been... Because if there's no chain of custody that the defence can see, then they're just going to make an absolute meal of that at the trial. Was it in his casing? Yes, I believe it was. I believe it was. It was an unspent round in its casing. That's my understanding. It's in the PCA. Hold on, let's find it in the PCA. This is the PCA. It's horrible font. Horrible font. But I got the PCA up just to dip into. I want to dip into it for another reason. So here we go. All right. Okay. So on October 13th, 2022, investigators executed a search warrant of Richard Allen's residence. Amongst other items, officers located jackets, boots, knives, and firearms, including a Sig Sauer model P226 40 caliber pistol with serial number U625627. Between October 14th and October 19th, the Indiana State Police Laboratory performed an analysis on Allen's Sig Sauer model P226. The laboratory performed a physical examination and classification of the firearm, function test, barrel and overall length measurement, test firing, ammunition component characterization, microscopic comparison. Okay, the laboratory determined the unspent round located within 2 feet of victim's body had been cycled through Richard M. Allen's Sig Sauer model P226. An identification opinion is reached when the evidence exhibits an agreement of class characteristics and a sufficient agreement of individual marks. Blah, blah, blah. So let's see what they say about it being let's just have a look, see if we can find that paragraph. So that's Bridge Guy. Here we go. So there's a 40 caliber unspent round less than 2 feet away from victim 2's body, between victim 1 and 2's bodies. The round was unspent and had extraction marks on it. So that's all it says. Okay, so now they go on about one man couldn't have done all of the things that was done. I'm very skeptical as well. I'm very skeptical, but we've got to give this fair consideration. This is part of the case now. So one man alone completed all of these tasks in less than 1 hour and 17 minutes. So that's what they've assumed is the time that the killers or killer had to do this, based on the timeline of events. which we're going to talk about. Liggett says one thing publicly, but another thing privately to his law enforcement friends, which is a massive statement to make. Publicly, Liggett has claimed under oath that one single solitary person was responsible for abducting and murdering the girls. Richard Allen, that's Richard Allen, claiming publicly that Richard Allen acted alone would allow Liggett to continue proclaiming that the murders were not the result of a coordinated abduction and subsequent ritualistic sacrifice at the hands of a pagan religious cult. But why would the sheriff be protecting this cult? I mean, is there an insinuation that the sheriff is part of this cult? Are we missing the Freemason connection? Because we know that Brad Holder is a Freemason. Is it not his Odinism that's the protective factor, but actually his Freemasonry? We don't know. That's not what it's saying. But on his Facebook, it shows a Freemason, thought of him as a Freemason. Okay. No, if Liggett continues to convince everyone publicly that one man and one man alone, Richard Allen, performed all the tasks, then Liggett must convince others, including the public, to ignore the voluminous mounting of evidence that supports the coordinated efforts of multiple Odinites. However, you will learn later in this memorandum that Liggett's claim that one man acting alone, and certainly not an organised band of cultists, murdered those girls is actually not something that he, Liggett, believes privately, based upon one-on-one conversations with other law enforcement. So, I've got some footnotes here. September 8th, the defence did receive photos of... Oh, okay. On September 8th, the defence did receive photographs of the bullet at the forensic lab where it was tested. However, the defence has not received photos of the bullets from the crime scene, technicians pulling out the bullet from the ground or placing it into an evidence bag as standard practice, especially in murder cases. You would expect to see it in its evidence bag. You absolutely would. You absolutely would. So how do we know that the bullet at the forensic lab is the same bullet that was in the ground? How do we know? How do we know? So that's just the position references. Still, to be fair to Liggett's public proclamation under oath, let's test Liggett's claim that one man, Richard Allen, acted alone by reviewing all the tasks that this 5'4" man would have to accomplish in order to pull off the abduction, ritualistic murder, then staged crime scene as it was found on February 14th, 2017. Okay, now this goes on for pages and pages and pages. There's like 90 points. So I'm going to shorten this. I'm going to read each point, but I'm going to shorten it. I'm not going to read it word for word because some of it's kind of graphic, but also it's grammatically nonsense in some places. They've done it for effect. I think they've done it for snark, which I always admire people who do things for snark. But anyway, I just cut down the time a little bit. And as I said at the beginning, I think one man could have pulled this off. I think one person could have pulled this off. Is this Liggett or Leggett? It's Liggett, but I keep pronouncing it wrong. It's Liggett. Liggett. Anyway. I think one person could have pulled it off if they were motivated to do so. If they'd planned it really well. Is it more likely that more than one person was involved? Kinda. Given that there does appear to be some kind of ritualistic thing going on there. But I'm 50-50. But this is what the defence puts forward as evidence as to why one man couldn't have done this on his own. And that one man being Richard Allen. One man would have had to be solely responsible for marching Abby and Libby down the steep hill. Then you'd have had to march them through the woods for some distance. So from the bridge, you hear the bridge guy saying, guys, down the hill. And then they go down the hill, and then they cross the river. So at some point, this single solitary man would have to have crossed a cold river with a depth of nearly 3.5 feet. At this depth, if the water was only 2 feet higher, which it wasn't, so why is this even relevant? Richard's whole body would have been completely immersed from head to toe. So if they're estimating that the river was 3.5 feet, well, he could wade through that. But remember, he's having to wade through it. Now, rivers flow. I don't know how fast the flow is of that river. Is there a shallower part that he could have crossed at? But remember, wherever he crossed, he would be controlling 2 girls. All right. Why would 2 men or men make it easier to cross a cold river? I don't know. I'm just reading what's been saying here. 2 might make it easier because you could have one holding like one girl's arm and the other holding another girl's arm. I guess it's easier in that respect. I think it's because remember, this person had a gun. So if you've got 2 girls that are absolutely terrified of being shot, then they're probably going to do what they're told. So with the cold river water rising well above his waist, this man acting alone has to worry about himself crossing the rushing river. I mean, how fast was it? Some rivers don't flow very fast. Some do, some don't. While others trying to corral 2 girls, keeping them from running or screaming, knowing that the houses were not far away. I don't know that they'd know that there was houses not far away. They'd have to run through the woods. And they knowing that the man had a gun. I think it's easy to control 2 children when you've got a gun, honestly. So then they'd have had to march the girls up the side to the site of the murders. Okay. Oh, whilst wearing clothes. Then they'd have had to subdue either Abby or Libby in rope or some other restraining device in order to kill the other one. Well, maybe they were tied up. Maybe they weren't. We don't know. That's just a speculation. But again, there's a gun in the mix. Because of the lack of blood on the girls' clothing, they had to have been completely disrobed. Well, you just tell them to take their clothes off at gunpoint. They're going to do it, in my opinion. What's these footnotes? Find Exhibit 26, which is the US Geological Survey depth rating of Deer Creek near Delphi, taken at the measuring station near the crime scene. Oh, so they've got the data. So they've got the data to say on that day how high that river was. So that's good. I remember doing all of that with the Nicola Bully case. I remember doing all of that. So they've got the evidence that the river was 3.5 feet high. Trooper Jerry Holman of the Unified Command has confirmed that both girls were naked at one point in time. So we've already described how the girls were when they were found. So once they were naked, one had to be subdued to prevent her from running away. Well, if she's terrified, she's not going anywhere. If she thinks she's going to get shot, she's not going anywhere. Maybe they were tied up. We don't know. So then this one man would have had to take out the knife or whatever instrument was used to kill the first child while the second child watched, which is an horrific thought. Without the other child screaming or becoming hysterical. How do we know that the child that was watching didn't become hysterical? How do we know that that child who was watching wasn't gagged and therefore couldn't scream? How do we know? We don't know that, do we? So then they'd have to walk over to the second child and inflict the same injuries. Well, it's easier with the second child because the first child's dead now. Autopsy notes taken from Liggett reveal that the pathologist stated that because of the particular vein that was severed, Abby suffered a slow death. So some of these I'm going to skip over now because it just constantly keeps saying Abby suffered a slow death. And we've got that. We've got that. We don't need to keep saying it. Okay. So we'll presume that this one man took Abby's life first and Libby's second. I don't know why we'd necessarily believe that. But anyway, this is what is being alleged. This is just their speculation. So after Abby died, this man would then have to wait for the blood to stop flowing. Why would they have to wait for the blood to stop flowing? I don't know. So then, okay, I'm gonna skip over some of this. So then the other child was murdered. And it's just obsessional, but I keep saying this. I really don't like it. So then the second child is killed, which they say is Libby, and then they use the blood to draw the rune on the tree. So then the bodies are paused. Okay. Then they put the branches on. Okay. So the branches on Libby. So this just describes how one person acting alone would have to find all of these sticks and put them on Libby, which I don't think in a wooded area, I don't think is going to be a difficult thing to do. But obviously, this is done in a ritualistic way, so they're going to have to carefully choose which sticks they used and stuff. Okay. At some point, once the blood drained from Abby, then she could be redressed. So she could be washed. I think she had to be washed and redressed. So the clothes will be wet because they've gone through the river. So it's going to be more difficult to get the clothes back on. Maybe that's why he put Libby's clothes on. Maybe they were easier to get on because Libby's bigger. She's taller than Abby was. She's a year older than Abby. I don't think she's a full year older, but maybe that's why Libby's clothes were put on Abby. Now, there's this thing about 2 bras, which is weird. So why would you put 2 bras on Abby's body? Which is weird. I don't get what they're talking about here. Why would there be 2 bras? So did he put her clothes back on and then Libby's over the top? I don't know. I don't know. But there's a pink shirt. I mean, it's just unnecessary. It's snarky. It's kind of silly. It's just trying to get this point across that one man had to do each of these things. But, you know, one man could have done it because each of these things didn't take very long. And we've got 1 hour and 17 minutes to play with here. But I agree that it would be quicker if there was more than one person. But waiting for blood to drain out of somebody, it doesn't matter how many people are there, does it? So, dresses Abby. All of this is relating to dressing Abby. It's very obsessional and silly, this bit. So we've now got the sweatshirt on. Okay. Keeps going about the sweatshirt. Putting the sweatshirt on. Keeps going. And it's pages of it. This is silly. This doesn't help the cause, in my opinion, to do this. A bit of snark, I like it. This is too much, in my opinion. Okay, so now we've got to put jeans on. So we're putting jeans on. All right, still putting jeans on. Now we're talking about shoes. So Abby's shoes are put on. I thought Abby's shoes were found in the creek. Over-egging the pudding. Yes, Stella, that's a good, yeah, over-egged. Very much over-egged. So many eggs. All the eggs in the world. Could be. Sounds like he just did a bunch of weird stuff to throw Ellie off, and now we're reading meaning into it. Possibly. Possibly. The F in blood on the tree is weird. Wasn't it one of Libby's shoes? Maybe you're right, ASMR. I do remember shoes being found in the creek. But I think one man could have done all this. But it's interesting why one person was dressed and the other one wasn't, and one was clean and the other one had blood on her. That's weird. I find that really weird. Was Libby killed first? We don't know, but in this document, the defense is assuming that Abby was killed first and then Libby. If memory is correct, one of the victims' underwear was missing. Yeah, I do remember that as well. So, but there must be more clothes missing, because if Abby had Libby's clothes on, where are Abby's clothes? I think it does, Manchester Vicky. One being clean and the other sounds like running out of time. Yeah. Yeah, it does to me. But then once you've already put Libby's clothes on Abby, then what clothes do you put on Libby? And why not just put Abby's clothes on Abby and Libby's clothes on Libby? Was it too awkward because the clothes were wet? But then why put clothes on either? I don't know. That's weird to me. That's one of the really perplexing issues that I've got with this. Whether it's one person, two people, whether it's an Odinist ritualistic thing or whether it isn't, it's weird that the two girls were treated differently. It could be as simple as just running out of time. Were they essayed? Apparently not. Now, look, there's conflicting evidence or conflicting information. Some people say that they were, or one was, and some people say no. Because we've not seen the autopsies, we don't know whether the assumption that Libby was essayed because she was found naked, that could be it. But we don't know. There's no mention of essay in this document and no mention of essay in the PCA, no mention of essay anywhere. I think it's just a speculation. But we don't know because we haven't seen the autopsy results. Has a decision been made yet about cameras in court? No, not to my knowledge, Mandy. Another possible explanation as to how Abby had no visible blood on her body or clothes other than near the site of the wound is that the man acting alone had hanged Abby on a tree, stringing her up by her feet. Oh, God. I hadn't read that the first time I'd read it. Oh, God. This method consistent with the pagan sacrificial rituals found on Brad Holder's Facebook page. So we're back to this again. We're back to this again. Is it possible? Yeah. Good Lord. Good Lord. Okay. So that would get the blood out quicker. But where's this blood then? Where's all this blood then? And why would they do that? I mean, that's very ritualistic. Did I watch Criminality? I started to, I started to last night after my live and fell asleep listening to it. So I probably only got like maybe less than an hour in. So I've watched a little bit of it. Took it away in buckets. Yeah, but then, right. Okay, so why were these people then not seen? See, this is the issue I've now got with a group of people being in the woods in the middle of the day where there's other people around. How were they not seen carrying buckets? I mean, I know it's not a hugely busy area, but there were people around. So why were they not seen with these buckets full of blood? That's why I think that if there's no blood at the scene, it's in the river. It's not been taken away. It's in the river. I don't know. I don't know. That's odd. Okay, and I don't think that somebody's brought a saw with them. I don't think so. This is where it's over egging the pudding here. This is getting too silly. In my opinion, it might all make sense to some people, but if you're going to take a saw to saw off the end of one twig, well, why was no one seen with a saw? Can we see that image again? Yeah. I'm not sure. I guess it's a male. I can't zoom in. A male. It's a male. I don't know though. I don't know. I don't know. Ow, Cassie, what are you doing? I think Cassie wants a wee. What's up? But there were other pictures. A small pocket saw. Okay. But why would you want to saw off the end of just one stick? That doesn't make sense. Why wouldn't you saw them all? I don't know. It could have done, taking a saw, could have done. Okay, so now we're talking about laying out the bodies. Again, over egging the pudding. Because it's not going to take very long to move someone's arm up and then their other arm up, or the leg up and the other leg around. That's not going to take more than 10 seconds. So now putting the branches on Libby's body. Good Lord. We're nearly at the end of this now. Once the straight line would have been painted using Libby's blood. So that's the F on the tree. Okay. Once he located those certain items. Okay, so Abby's jeans are still on the ground. So he's going to gather them up. He's going to walk to the river. He's going to toss the clothing items that weren't used into the river. How long were they missing before Mum was looking? Okay, so they were meant to be picked up by, was it Libby's granddad? They were meant to be picked up at 3:30 or thereabouts, if I remember rightly. And they didn't show. And then the cops were called at 5:30. So they had a look around first. They had a look to try and find them first and realised they weren't there. And then they called the cops. So they had to have been murdered by 3:30, really, to have been safe. Does anyone know when this trial is set to start? Yes, I do, Chopper. Do you want me to tell you? Do you want me to tell you? Jury selection starts on the 8th of January. I think that there's a high likelihood in a wooded area that is a national park, isn't it? It will have maintenance, and I think there would have been possibly twigs and branches there that have been sawn off trees in the past that have just been left. Yes, January 8th for jury selection. And then obviously however long jury selection takes, and then it's the trial. So January. But given this latest bombshell, I can't see how it's going to be happening in January. I don't know. Could be. State park. Yeah. Sorry, we call them national parks here in the UK. But yeah, state park. We call like things like Snowdonia as a national park and wherever else is a national park. It's just but yeah, state park. Yeah. Okay, so throwing the clothes in the river. So I do know some items were found in the river. I do know that. So now he's got to, right. This doesn't make sense. Once the man acting alone made sure he left nothing behind, including his DNA, hair, fingerprints, shoe prints, the man would be able to leave. Wouldn't it be easier? I don't know, flicking bollocks. Was it a recent cut? I don't know. Yeah, you would be able to tell if it had just been cut or whether it had been cut ages ago. You would, but I don't know the answer. So if one man was acting alone, right, so he's got to make sure it doesn't leave any hair, DNA, fingerprints, or shoe prints. Wouldn't it be more difficult? The more people you've got in your group, the more chance you have of something being left. Now, obviously, you can wear gloves. And if you've got virtually no hair, you're not going to leave hair. Well, you might leave a beard hair. So we don't know that hair wasn't found at the scene, though. There may have been hair found at the scene, or there may have been things missed at the scene. But it would be quite possible not to leave any DNA behind or fingerprints as long as you wear gloves. And it doesn't matter whether there's one person there or 10 people there. As long as you're careful, you don't cut yourself, you're not going to leave DNA or fingerprints. You might leave hair, and there's a greater chance of leaving hair the more people there are, because we all shed, right? Shoe prints is an interesting one. I've never considered this before. This is in the woods. Wouldn't there be shoe prints? So I've never heard anybody talk about shoe prints, whether shoe prints were found. You don't think this is going to delay the trial? Okay. Pair of prosecutors says there's no real issue. It's all to get around the gag order and put the defence's theory to taint the jury pool. Yeah. Yeah, because the state has got to respond now. They've got to respond. Ground probably frozen in February. Apparently, it was unseasonably warm. So, would the ground still be frozen? Would it be hard enough not to leave shoe prints? Possibly. Possibly. Depends how hard the ground is. If it's rocky, lots of clay, won't be any footprints. Yeah, maybe. Maybe it was hard enough. Yeah, maybe there wasn't any. Okay. So then the man is then going to walk up the steep hill. So he's going to toddle back up the steep hill and make sure that this is good snark. Thank you, Jane, for the £5. Thank you. That's very kind of you. So although this man acting alone was somehow smart enough to keep his DNA, fingerprints, footprints and hair and other evidence out of the crime scene, this man acting alone was apparently dumb enough to decide to walk down 300 North in the middle of the day, headed west, easily visible to the public and easily visible to anybody driving a vehicle on 300 North, like Sarah Carbo. Okay. So that's where one witness allegedly saw Richard Allen or somebody looking like him. So, and that was being spotted at 3:57 p.m. So we're going to look at the timeline in the PCA in a minute. Let's just finish off this section. We're nearly finished. So one man, 5'4" in stature, handled all these tasks. I think a 5'4" man could have handled all those tasks. If he knew what he was planning to do, you could do that in an hour. But it would be easier if it was in a group. It would be easier to keep the girls subdued while they were still alive. But they've over-egged the pudding by saying it would take so long to position them and put sticks on them. That wouldn't take very long at all, would it? You're in a woods, there's loads of sticks. If you want to put sticks on their bodies, that's not going to take long at all. All right. Okay, so crossing the river, like controlling them crossing the river. That was probably the danger point. But then again, they're going to be scared crossing the river with a gun to their backs. It's going to be terrifying. Terrifying. Okay, so that's just a summary of what we've already heard. Okay, so were all these acts committed by one man acting alone? All these things occurred between 17 minutes and 1 hour and... What? All these things occurred between 17 minutes and 1 hour and 17 minutes after the girls heard the phrase down the hill at approximately 2:13 p.m. Okay, so they're saying there's a maximum of 1 hour and 17 minutes. Okay. So that would be 3:30. Not plausible according to the defense. I think if you're motivated, it is plausible. 1 hour and 17 minutes. We should sit in silence for 1 hour and 17 minutes to see how long it actually is. So, at his August the 8th, 2023 deposition, Sheriff Liggett was adamant that one person and one person alone, Richard Allen, was involved in the murder of Abby and Libby. However, off record, Liggett doesn't believe that one man was capable of pulling off all of these tasks, especially in such a short period of time, leaving behind a crime scene with no forensic evidence. As referred to earlier, Liggett says one thing publicly under oath, but a different thing off record to his buddies. One of these buddies is former sheriff and now Chief Deputy Sheriff Tobe Leesenby. The day after Liggett's August the 8th, 2023 deposition, Tobe Leesenby was subject to a deposition. When Tobe Leesenby was asked at his deposition how many people he believed were involved in the murder of Abby and Libby, he provided a different answer than Liggett. He indicated that at least 2 people were involved. The reason Leesenby gave as to his belief that at least 2 people were involved was Leesenby's belief that it would be difficult for one individual to accomplish what occurred. So the sheriff and the chief deputy sheriff have different opinions. Doesn't mean to say that the sheriff is saying one thing in public and one thing in private. It just means that one guy has got one opinion and one guy has got another opinion, in my opinion. But then again, he goes on to say this. When asked if any other law enforcement officers shared this perspective, he provided a surprising answer, based upon what Liggett had testified under oath the day before. Yes, at least one other law enforcement officer believed multiple people were involved in the murder of Abby and Libby. Tony Liggett. According to Leesenby's sworn statement, it was common for Leesenby, and Tony Liggett to have one-on-one conversations that Tony Liggett definitely believed that more than one person was involved. Why across the river and how deep was it? 3.5 feet at where they think they crossed, according to the river's measuring station that day. Why across the river? Presumably because the woods on the other side were quieter and maybe less likely to be for people to be there, because they actually went onto private land. They went onto Ron Logan's land. So you've got the state park area, and they crossed over the river and they were on Ron Logan's land. When the girls were found, they were on Ron Logan's land. That's why he was one of the reasons why Ron Logan was a suspect for so long, is that the girls were on his land. So perhaps they crossed over onto private property because they thought people would be less likely to go there on private property. Because people, if you're local, you know what land is public land and what land is private property, don't you? Unless you're Cassie, and then she doesn't care. She doesn't give two shits about private property. She'll run all over your land. She doesn't care. Doesn't care. What about Ron Logan? Was he part of this? There's no mention of Ron Logan. Honestly, I've never thought Ron Logan was involved. Never. But that's just me. But there's no mention of Ron Logan in this documentation. The defense don't seem to be using him as some form of being involved in this group. It's potentially a game changer, yeah. It's certainly the reasonable doubt that the defense needed. Okay. Tony Liggett, who just the day before, under oath, claimed that only one person, Richard Allen, was involved in the murders, privately behind the scenes was saying something altogether different. Tut, tut, tut. If a cult consisting of more than one person in a coordinated fashion lured the girls to the bridge, how would they do that? How would they do that? Because they weren't lured to the bridge. I mean, were they lured to the bridge? Because this brings in Anthony Shots, the Anthony Shots profile, and Kegan Kline communicating with Libby on the morning of the murder. I mean, where's Kegan Kline fit into this? Is Kegan Kline just another one that is just coincidentally involved in this by contacting Libby via the Anthony Shots profile? Yeah, Ron Logan has died now. Yeah, he's passed away. I don't know. So how were they lured there? Because they just said they were going for a walk. And it was Libby's sister that drove them there. Okay, lured the girls to the bridge, abducted the girls, and then collectively were able to perform all the tasks mentioned in the previous paragraphs. That perspective will cut against Liggett's sworn claim that the murderer acted alone. Conversely, even more problematic for Liggett is stating under oath what he, Liggett, actually believes, i.e. that more than one person was involved in the murders of Abby and Libby, would then lend credence to the fact that the accumulation of evidence gathered by Murphy, Ferenczi and Click, who we talked about earlier on, but we're going to talk about them much more later, strongly supports on February 13th, 2017, several men from a pagan religious cult were involved. For some reason, Liggett is obviously not interested in wanting anyone, including the judge, to know that the evidence strongly supports an organised pagan cult being the killers. Therefore, sadly, it's not surprising that Liggett lied under oath when he claimed in his deposition that only one man acted alone, murdered those girls. If Liggett had told the judge that he believed that multiple people were involved in the crime, and if Liggett also provided the judge with massive amounts of missing detail of the Odinite involvement in the murders, then there would be no way that the judge would have or should have signed the search warrant. This court will be considering whether Liggett intentionally or recklessly concealed information and intentionally fabricated facts in his affidavit for search warrant. Liggett's duplicity under oath about the number of people he felt were involved in the murders was just one of many reasons to support the belief that Liggett intentionally concealed evidence and fabricated other evidence in his sworn affidavit. That is a big claim. That is a big claim to make. Really big claim to make. Now, these guys, Brad Holder and his friends, they were investigated in the early days. So what the state needs to explain is why those guys were ruled out. Because if those guys had really solid alibis, then they couldn't have done it, could they? So it could be that they were ruled out in the early days and there's no reason to look at them again. So now the state has to respond with that information. They have to say why these guys weren't the killers. Who are the occult suspects? Brad Holder, Elvis Fields. Can't remember the names of them. We talked about it this morning, but we're going to be talking about it again later, because later on I'm going to do part 2, which goes into the Odinism and how the Odinites, so the suspects in this Odin cult, relate to the murders and why the defense feel that they are the real killers. So we're going to go into that later tonight. But just quickly, I just want to just quickly refresh your memory from the PCA. How many people saw Richard Allen or somebody that looked like Richard Allen? So there was 3 juveniles, all right, who were on the Monon High Bridge on February 13th. And they advised they were walking on the trail towards Freedom Bridge to go home when they encountered a male walking from Freedom Bridge to the Monon High Bridge. They described him as kind of creepy. He was wearing blue jeans and a really light blue jacket, and his hair was grey, maybe a little brown, and he did not really show his face. So it was a duck canvas type jacket. She said hi to the male, but he glared at them. And then she recalls him being in all black and had something covering his mouth. So he's either wearing a blue coat or all black coat. So these juveniles have got different things. Elvis Fields is a mate of Brad Holder. Go into my live from earlier on today and it's all explained there. So we've got one person saying he's in all black, another one person saying he's in blue, not very tall with a bigger build. Well, that would describe him. She said no bigger than 5'10". Well, we know that Richard Allen is only 5'4", which is very small for a guy. So what we don't have in the PCA is people saying he was an unusually small guy for a man. And so there's 3 juveniles all giving different descriptions, which is not unusual, because recall is not photographic. So, but the third person advised he was wearing a black hoodie, black jeans and black boots, which he wasn't. Bridge guy was wearing a blue coat, like a dark blue coat and blue jeans. Okay. So, okay, she advised, so 126. She advised was when they encountered the man who matched the description of the photograph taken from victim 2's video. So, a blue or black windbreaker jacket. Advised that the jacket had a collar, wearing baggy jeans and was taller than her. So we don't know how tall this person was. So whoever this person was, we don't know how tall she was. So she said hi and he said nothing back. Walking with a purpose, like he knew what he was doing. Okay. Then investigators spoke with Blank, who was on the trails. Video from Hoosier Harvester captured this person's vehicle traveling eastbound at 146 towards the entrance from Mia's farm. Advised she saw 4 juvenile females walking on the bridge. She was driving underneath the way to the park. She advised no other cars parked across from Mia's farm. She advised she walked to the Morning High Bridge and observed a male matching the one from victim 2's video. So a white male wearing blue jeans and blue jean jacket. So was it a jean jacket? Didn't look like a denim jacket to me, but it was a blue jacket. She advised he was standing on the first platform, approximately 50 feet away from her. She turned around at the bridge and continued her walk. Halfway between the bridge and the parking area, she passed 2 girls walking towards Morning High Bridge, which most probably would be Abby and Libby. Video from the Hoosier harvester showed at 1:49 a white car matching hers travelling away. So Abby and Libby were there shortly before 2 p.m. Okay, who else have we got? So her vehicle was seen on the camera at 2:14 p.m. leaving westbound from the trails. Blank advised when she was leaving, she noted a vehicle parked in an odd manner at the old Child Protective Services building. She said it was not odd for vehicles to be parked there, but she noticed it was odd because of the manner it was parked, backed in the rear of the building. Okay, so now we've got another man. Investigators received a tip from Blank in which he stated he was on his way to Delphi on State Road 25 around 2:10 and observed a purple PT Cruiser or small SUV type vehicle parked on the south side of the old CPS building. Well, we know that Richard Allen's car wasn't purple, it was black. It was a black Ford Focus, not purple, not a PT Cruiser. A Ford Focus. So both drew diagrams of where they saw the vehicle, and their diagrams generally matched the area. Okay. He described it as possibly being a smart car. Well, smart cars are tiny. They are not Ford Focuses. I mean, I know Ford Focuses are not big cars. So there's some discrepancy in what this man that they're seeing is wearing. There's also some discrepancy in the vehicle that they're seeing. But having said that, we are well aware, certainly in psychology, we're well aware that memory recall is not photographic and people do recall details differently than what were actually there. And 2 people who saw exactly the same thing can recall the same thing differently. So this is not unusual, but it's just noteworthy. Any news about a press conference? No, I'm not aware that there's going to be a press conference on this. I'm not saying that there isn't going to be. I'm just not aware that there is going to be one. Are the state police and FBI supposed to have missed all this? No, they're supposed to have seen all this. And apparently, according to the defense, the FBI agrees with them that this was a ritualistic sacrificial killing. Go and watch the live from earlier today. Talked about that. How tall is Brad Holder? I don't know, but I'd like to know. Didn't Tony K own a PT Cruiser? I do not know the answer to that. Okay, so investigator spoke with someone else who stated she was travelling east on 300 North. Observed a male subject walking past west on the north side away from Morning High Bridge. So that was at 3:57. So she was travelling on that at 3:57 and she advised the male subject was wearing a blue coloured jacket and blue jeans and was muddy and bloody. Appeared to have gotten into a fight. Investigators, right. So at 3:57, there was somebody walking along the road, muddy and bloody, according to this person. However, the defense are countering what this person is saying. But we'll get into that in a future live stream. Now, what did Allen himself say? What did Richard Allen himself say? Investigators reviewing prior tips encountered a tip narrative from an officer who interviewed Richard Allen in 2017. The narrative stated, Mr. Allen was on the trail between 13:30 and 15:30, so that's 1:30 and 3:30 in the PM. He parked at the old Farm Bureau building and walked to the new Freedom Bridge. While at the Freedom Bridge, he saw 3 females. So he saw the girls who saw him. So not Abby and Libby, 3 other juveniles who saw him. So 2 of them thought he was wearing black, 1 of them thought he was wearing blue. So those girls. He noted 1 was taller and had brown or black hair. He did not remember description, nor did he speak with them. He walked from the Freedom Bridge to the High Bridge. He did not see anybody, although he stated he was watching a stock ticker on his phone as he walked. He stated there were vehicles parked at the High Bridge trailhead. However, he did not pay attention to them and he did not take any photographs or videos. Investigators believe Mr. Allen was referring to the former Child Protective Services building, as there was not a Farm Bureau building in the area, nor has there been. Investigators believe the females he saw were the juveniles due to the time they were leaving the trail. Investigators discovered Richard Allen owned 2 vehicles in 2017, a 2016 black Ford Focus and a 2006 grey Ford 500. So they're saying that the description of the vehicles that various people saw was his Ford Focus. Although I don't think a PT Cruiser, a small SUV or a smart car necessarily all describe a Ford Focus. But again, memory can be very strange. It can play tricks on you. So he said that he left the trails. He was watching fish. And he walked out to the first platform on the bridge. Then he walked back, sat on a bench, and then left. Stated he parked his car on the side of an old building. Told investigators he was wearing blue jeans and a blue or black carbar jacket with a hood. He advised he may have been wearing some type of head covering as well. He further claimed he saw no one else except for the juvenile girls he saw east of the Freedom Bridge. So there you go. And then they executed the search warrant. Any phone pings? We don't know. Don't know about phone pings. Not mentioned phone pings. Were they meeting anyone? Abby and Libby, we don't know. They just said that they were going for a walk. Were they lured? We don't know. We don't know. We've got these strange details, you know, Kegan Kline, the Anthony Shots profile, being like the last person apart from Libby's family to talk to the girls, but yet Kegan Kline's apparently not involved. So is it just a coincidence? Is it just coincidence? I don't know about his phone data. So he was on his phone because he was watching his stocks. Let's review this from the top. Because I do remember when this came out, thinking, that's interesting, provocative, shows some evidence, but is there more? I remember discussing it at the time. So that's a description of, view of electronic records, review of video. Victim 1 and Victim 2 were dropped off at 1:49. Okay, so that's where they were dropped off. Video from Victim 2's phone. So that's Bridge Guy's down the hill. We know all that. Okay, found the bodies. So then we've read all this. 3 juveniles who describe someone who looked like Richard Allen. Then we've got okay, we've read that. We've read that. So these are all descriptions of a man that they think is Richard Allen. So we've read that. Then what Richard Allen said. So his cell phone did not list an EMEI, but did have the following, whatever those are. Potential follow-up for information. Who were the 3 girls walking So that was just what was written in the notes in 2017. That's all that was. So Richard Allen, what is vehicle owned? Was interviewed again in 2022 on the trails. Further stated he went out of the Morning High Bridge. So no, there was no phone data, but I'll tell you why there was no phone data. Because when he was arrested in 2022, well, that was 5 years after the murders happened. So you're not going to have 5 years back of phone pings. You're not going to be able to get them from 5 years back. So if his phone had been investigated in 2017, then yes, his phone would have pinged in that area, because he said he was in that area. He came forward and said he was in that area. But it's too much time has gone by. So he's going to have, maybe even have a different phone. So that's why there's no phone pings or anything, no investigation on his phone. It's too long ago. If they'd have done it in 2017, it would have been a very different picture. But it would have said he was there, because he was. He said he was there. So it wouldn't necessarily have told us anything really striking. Unless they could have honed the phone ping in to a really short, you know, in some areas where there's lots of coverage, it could have honed in on a really tight area. You know, like Chad Daybell got caught out by that, didn't he? So, okay, so furthermore, victims to, okay, we've gone through that. So Richard Allen told investigators on the trail between 1:30 and 3:30. We've gone through that. And then we've got the... okay, we've got a male description of Richard Allen. So several people saw him on the... saw a man who looked like Richard Allen. And Richard Allen himself puts himself there. And that's it. So it's not a strong PCA. I mean, it's that bullet. It would come down to that bullet. So if the defense could get that bullet thrown out, the state are going to struggle based on the information from the PCA. Now, obviously, the PCA is the information up to his arrest. They may have a ton more information about him that we don't know yet. Holler from Las Vegas. Holler from, Holler from Las Vegas. Hello from Lancashire, England. So, what we're going to do later today is part 2, which is the long one. This is the long one. So it goes into Odinism, white supremacy. I've only skim read this. I've not read this in any detail. But that's what we're going to do later. So later on, I'll put the scheduler up. I'll give you a little bit more notice than I did today. It's probably going to be, let's say, 8:39 p.m. my time. Maybe something like that. Any idea what time? Maybe 8:30 or 9 p.m. my time. So that would be 4 p.m. Eastern. And then whatever that is everywhere else. So there we go. Did everybody remember to like? Let's see how many likes we got here. We've only got 294 likes. We've currently got 649 people watching. So people, tap that like button before you leave. It just helps with the algorithm. Oh, we got a migraine that wiped your memory. Oh, I hate migraines. I don't get them very often. C260. I see 328 now. 336. Oh, those likes are going up. So before you leave, bob your DNA on that like button. Smash the like. And I'll see you all later. Thanks as always to the mods. Thanks for the donations, as always. I'll see you later. I'll put the schedule up in a bit. All right. Bye, guys.